I discovered when I first began reading my own poems that it is necessary to do a little preamble at the beginning and to make occasional remarks in between readings of poems or groups of poems. But I want to impress upon you that I realize that nothing that I say in this way, and nothing that I'm saying at the moment, is of the slightest importance. At least it is a matter of no importance whether anything I say is of importance or not. But the preamble, I think, is necessary because I think an audience wants to size up the reader before he begins to bury himself in his own work, and to form some preliminary impressions, for better or worse, before he begins to read. As for the remarks in between, these are necessary both for me as reader and I think for you as audience. Remember that they are simply points at which we both relax. If one proceeds directly from one poem to reading another, which may be of a very different type, the beginning of the second poem is rather overshadowed by the ending of the first. You have got to get rid of the effect of one before you are ready for another. And similarly, the reader has got to relax and, in a way, to tune up again before starting something different. But as time goes on, it becomes difficult not both to make a choice of what to read and to think of anything fresh to say. As for the choice, it's difficult because I haven't written a great deal. And yet I try to read something each time, which at least I haven't read for a long time, if at all. And I have now got to the point at which, as tonight I think, I, on the whole, shall read things more because I like them myself, or like to read them, than because I think they are what other people want. But as for what to say about them, well, there are now so many other people who know a good deal, understand my poems a good deal better than I do, that I'm rather diffident about giving any sort of explanation, because they appear sometimes to mean so much more and such different things than anything I ever thought. And I'm especially nervous since people have also been doing a little in the way of analyzing them according to Freud or Jung or somebody else. And if there are any horrid meanings which I myself are unaware of, that you must take for granted and not blame me for them. Then again, another thing that makes it more difficult is that I know that of a fairly large proportion of my poems there are recordings. And some of the recordings I've taken a good deal of trouble over. And I wonder why, except out of curiosity to see the man doing it, people should now bother to come out on rainy nights and sit in a theater to hear me when they could, if they liked, sit comfortably at home or somewhere else and hear the records. But just as I'm told that there are boys nowadays who would rather, who actually prefer to see a football game by television than to go to the football game. And they may be sensible. But that's one way in which I think I shall never be seen. I hope not. Television. But I would like to say seriously that I think there is something to be said for a direct reading as against a recording. I took a good deal of trouble, especially over the four quartets, because I did that in London, and I had plenty of time to record it. In fact, it took one afternoon a week for about 3 months. But that was partly due to sometimes I had a cold, my voice wasn't good enough, and sometimes in that winter the electricity current wasn't strong enough and wouldn't record, and sometimes somebody broke one of the records and it had to be done over again. But more because after hearing it I usually wanted to do it over again. But I think that a good recording, the ideal one I found I was aiming at in a recording was not to make any mistakes. Because if you make a slip in a record, everybody will know where it is, and their nerves will be on edge for the same mistake to happen in the same place every time they put the record on, and that won't do. But I think just because one is so occupied with not doing anything wrong, with getting every word right, it is somewhat a check to letting oneself go, and that occasionally, at least here and there, a direct reading may rise to a point which it's almost impossible to reach in recording. And another thing I found about recording is that after about 20 minutes that the fatigue, the strain, begins to be evident in the voice. You can tell that you should have stopped. Well, if you're doing a long thing, you want more time than that, and the knowledge that your voice will, exhaustion in voice will appear in 20 minutes is rather an impediment, whereas I think that in a personal reading that is not apparent. But I'm glad I recorded, because I did learn a lot, and by the most painful means, through hearing my records back, about enunciation. And I think that possibly I read, at any rate, a little more clearly now than I did before I had to find out as much as I had to about my own speech. To go on, I always read in the chronological order, which is simplest. But there's another good reason for that, which is that an author, a poet, rather tends to like best what he's written most recently. And therefore he reads it best. The early things become rather remote, and also you see from a later stage of exercise and training, you see all sorts of flaws of immaturity, which are embarrassing, and it's difficult to read one's early poems with the same conviction. And therefore it's best to leave the things that you think you do best until the end. So I shall begin taking them period by period. I know I shall disappoint some people, but I am rather embarrassed with Prufrock. No, I feel it's rather an exposing an adolescent personality. And I think that ones of my earliest published poems that I read best are the Preludes, because they are the most objective, and I think show their age to best advantage. So I want to begin by reading my 4 Preludes, which of course are 40 years old. The winter evening settles down with smell of steaks in passageways. 6 o'clock. The burnt-out ends of smoky days, and now a gusty shower wraps the grimy scraps of withered leaves about your feet and newspapers from vacant lots. The showers beat on broken blinds and chimney pots, and at the corner of the street a lonely cab horse steams and stamps. And then the lighting of the lamps. The morning comes to consciousness of faint, stale smells of beer from the sawdust-trampled street with all its muddy feet that press to early coffee stands. With the other masquerades that time resumes, one thinks of all the hands that are raising dingy shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. You tossed a blanket from the bed. You lay upon your back and waited. You dozed and watched the night revealing 1,000 sordid images of which your soul was constituted. They flickered against the ceiling. And when all the world came back and the light crept up between the shutters and you heard the sparrows in the gutters, you had such a vision of the street as the street hardly understands. Sitting along the bed's edge, where you curl the papers from your hair or clasp the yellow soles of feet in the palms of both soiled hands. His soul stretched tight across the skies that fade behind a city block or trampled by insistent feet at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock. And short square fingers stuffing pipes and evening newspapers, and eyes assured of certain certainties, the conscience of a blackened street impatient to assume the world. I am moved by fancies that are curled around these images and cling. The notion of some infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering thing. Wipe your hand across your mouth and laugh. The worlds revolve like ancient women gathering fuel in vacant lots. There is one other poem of that early period which always a certain proportion, now it may be a dwindling proportion, of people like to hear, coming rather at the end of the period, La Figlia che Piange. Stand on the highest pavement of the stair, lean on a garden urn, weave the sunlight in your hair. Clasp your flowers to you with a pained surprise, fling them to the ground and turn with a fugitive resentment in your eyes. But weave the sunlight in your hair. So I would have had him leave, so I would have had her stand and grieve, so he would have left as the soul leaves the body torn and bruised, as the mind deserts the body it has used. I should find some way incomparably light and deft, some way we both should understand, simple and faithless, as a smile and shake of the hand. She turned away, but with the autumn weather compelled my imagination many days and many hours. Her hair over her arms and her arms full of flowers. And I wonder how they should have been together. I should have lost a gesture and a pose. Sometimes these cogitations still amaze the troubled midnight and the noon's repose. Well, that's the period (1910 to 12). Then the next period of 16, 17, 18. After a few years in which I didn't write anything. Examples of what I call the Théophile Gautier influence. When reverted to rhymed quatrains, Whispers of Immortality. Webster was much possessed by death and saw the skull beneath the skin, and breastless creatures underground leaned backward with a lipless grin. Daffodil bulbs instead of balls stared from the sockets of the eyes. He knew that thought clings round dead limbs, tightening its lusts and luxuries. Dawn, I suppose, was such another who found no substitute for sense, to seize and clutch and penetrate, expert beyond experience. He knew the anguish of the marrow, the ague of the skeleton. No contact possible to flesh allayed the fever of the bone. Pushkin is nice. Her Russian eye is underlined for emphasis. Uncorseted, her friendly bust gives promise of pneumatic bliss. The couched Brazilian jaguar compels the scampering marmoset with subtle effluence of cat. Grishkin has a maisonette. The sleek Brazilian jaguar does not in its arboreal gloom distill so rank a feline smell as Grishkin in a drawing room. And even the abstract entities circumambulate her charm. But our lot crawls between dry ribs to keep our metaphysics warm. And one more poem of the same style and period, which I haven't read for a long time, which I do out of homage to a distinguished family, Sweeney erect. Excuse me. Paint me a cavernous waste shore cast in the unstilled Cyclades. Paint me the bold and fractious rocks faced by the snarled and yelping seas. Display me earless above, reviewing the insurgent gales, which tangle Ariadne's hair and swell with haste the perjured sails. Morning stirs the feet and hands, Nausicaa and Polypheme, gesture of orangutan arises from the sheets in steam. This withered root of knots of hair slitted below and gashed with eyes, this oval O cropped out with teeth, the sickle motion from the thighs jackknifes upward at the knees and straightens out from heel to hip, pushing the framework of the bed and clawing at the pillow slip. Sweeney, addressed full length to shave, broad-bottomed, pink from nape to base, knows the female temperament and wipes the suds around his face. The lengthened shadow of a man is history, said Emerson, who had not seen the silhouette of Sweeney straddled in the sun. Tests the razor on his leg, waiting until the shriek subsides. The epileptic on the bed curves backward, clutching at her sides. The ladies of the corridor find themselves involved, disgraced, call witness to their principles and deprecate the lack of taste, observing that hysteria might easily be misunderstood. Mrs. Turner intimates it does the house no sort of good. But Doris, toweled from the bath, enters padding on broad feet, bringing sal volatile and a glass of brandy neat. Well, from that is rather an abrupt transit to the wasteland, but I'm afraid you must put up with that because there's almost nothing left to say about the wasteland that I can say. And I think I will read the first and the last sections. The burial of the dead. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us. Coming over the Starnberger See with a shower of rain, we stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin gar keine Russin, stamm aus Litauen, echt Deutsch. And when we were children staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled and I was frightened. He said, "Mary, Mary, hold on tight." And down we went. In the mountains there you'll feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images, where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. Frisch weht der Wind, der Heimat zu, mein irisch Kind, wo weilest du? You gave me hyacinths first a year ago. They called me the Hyacinth Girl. Yet when we came back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak, and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing, looking into the heart of light, the silence. Don't leert das meer. Madame Sosostris, famous clairvoyante, had a bad cold, nevertheless is known to be the wisest woman in Europe, with a wicked pack of cards. Here, said she, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Look. Here is Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. Here is the man with 3 staves, and here the wheel, and here is the one-eyed merchant. And this card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. I do not find the hanged man. Fear death by water. I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. Thank you. If you see dear Mrs. Equitone, tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. Unreal city. Under the brown fog of a winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs short and infrequent were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet. Flowed up the hill and down King William Street to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours, with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. There I saw one I knew and stopped him, crying, "Stetson, you were with me in the ships at Miley. That corpse you planted last year in your garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence, that's friend to men, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite lecteur, mon semblable, mon frère." What the thunder said. After the torchlight red on sweaty faces, after the frosty silence in the gardens, after the agony in stony places, the shouting and the crying, prison and palace and reverberation of thunder of spring over distant mountains. He who was living is now dead. We who were living are now dying with a little patience. Here is no water, but only rock, rock and no water, and the sandy road, the road winding above among the mountains, which are mountains of rock without water. If there were water, we should stop and drink. Amongst the rock one cannot stop or think. Sweat is dry and feet are in the sand. If there were only water amongst the rock, dead mountain mouth of carious teeth that cannot spit. Here one can neither stand nor lie nor sit. There is not even silence in the mountains, but dry, sterile thunder without rain. There is not even solitude in the mountains, but red, sullen faces sneer and snarl from doors of mud-cracked houses. If there were water and no rock, if there were rock and also water, and water, a spring, a pool among the rock, if there were the sound of water only, not the cicada and dry grass singing, but sound of water over a rock, where the hermit thrush sings in the pine trees, drip, drop, 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 but there is no water. Who is the third who walks always beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together, but when I look ahead up the white road, there is always another one walking beside you, gliding, wrapped in a brown mantle, hooded. I do not know whether a man or a woman. But who is that on the other side of you? What is that sound high in the air? Murmur of maternal lamentation. Who are those hooded hordes swarming over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth, ringed by the flat horizon only? What is the city over the mountains, cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air, falling towers? Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London, unreal. A woman drew her long black hair out tight and fiddled whisper music on those strings, and bats with baby faces in the violet light whistled and beat their wings and crawled head downward down a blackened wall. And upside down in air were towers tolling reminiscent bells that kept the hours, and voices singing out of empty cisterns and exhausted wells. In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing. Over the tumbled graves about the chapel, there is the empty chapel, only the wind's home. It has no windows, and the door swings. Dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood on the roof tree, cocorico, in a flash of lightning. Then a damp gust bringing rain. Ganga was sunken, and the limp leaves waited for rain, while the black clouds gathered far distant over Himavant. The jungle crouched, humped in silence. Then spoke the thunder. Datta. What have we given, my friend? Blood shaking my heart, the awful daring of a moment's surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract by this and this only. We have existed, which is not to be found in our obituaries or in memories draped by the beneficent spider, or under seals broken by the lean solicitor. In our empty rooms. Diet found. I have heard the key Turn in the door once, and turn once only. We think of the key, each in his prison. Thinking of the key, each confirms a prison. Only at nightfall ethereal rumors revive for a moment a broken Coriolanus. Damyata. The boat responded gaily. To the hand expert with sail and oar, the sea was calm. Your heart would have responded gaily when invited, beating obedient to controlling hands. I sat upon the shore, fishing, with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my lands in order? London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. Poi s'espose nel fuoco che li affina. Quando fiammo ti Caledon, oh swallow, swallow, le prince d'Aquitaine à la tour abolie. These fragments I have shorn against my ruins. Why then I'll fit you, Hieronymo's mad again. Datta, Tayatam, Damyata, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Yes, I'm going to change the order after that. I want to read I think I will read both parts of the unfinished Coriolan, which I think I originally designed to be in 4 or 5 parts of about that length. Following out the career of a certain Cyril Parker, who turns up at different ages in the 2 existing parts. But beyond that, I have not now the slightest notion of what I intended the thing to be as a whole. These must stand, if they can, on their own merits. Triumphal March. This one is rather difficult to read, but do my best. Stone, bronze, stone, steel, stone, oak leaves, horses' heels over the paving, and the flags, and the trumpets, and so many eagles. How many? Count them. And such a press of people. We hardly knew ourselves that day, or knew the city. This is the way to the temple, and we, so many crowding away, so many waiting. How many waiting? What did it matter on such a day? Are they coming? No, not yet. You can see some eagles and hear the trumpets. Here are they come. Is he coming? The natural wakeful life of our ego is a perceiving. We can wait with our stools and our sausages. What comes first? Can you see? Tell us. It is 5,800,000 rifles and carbines, 102,000 machine guns, 28,000 trench mortars, 53,000 field and heavy guns. I cannot tell how many projectiles, mines and fuses, 13,000 aeroplanes, 24,000 aeroplane engines, 50,000 ammunition wagons, now 55,000 army wagons, 11,000 field kitchens, 1,150 field bakeries. What a time that took. Will it be he now? No. These are the golf club captains, these the scouts. And now the Société Gymnastique de Poissy, and now come the mayor and the liverymen. Look, there he is now. Look. There is no interrogation in his eyes or in the hands, quiet over the horse's neck, and the eyes watchful, waiting, perceiving, indifferent. Oh, hidden under the dove's wing, hidden in the turtle's breast, under the palm tree at noon, under the running water, at the still point of the turning world. Oh, hidden. Now they go up to the temple, then the sacrifice. Now come the virgins bearing urns, urns containing dust, dust, dust of dust, and now stone, bronze, stone, steel, stone, oak leaves, horses' heels over the paving. That is all we could see, but how many eagles and how many trumpets. And Easter Day, we didn't get to the country, so we took young Cyril to church, and then rang a bell, and he said, right out loud, crumpets. Don't throw away that sausage, it'll come in handy. He's artful. Please, will you give us a light? Light. Light. Il est sur la fusilae, il la faisait. Difficulties of a statesman. Cry, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, comprehending the companions of the bath, the knights of the British Empire, the cavaliers, oh, cavaliers of the Legion of Honor, the Order of the Black Eagle first and second class, and the Order of the Rising Sun. Cry, cry, what shall I cry? The first thing to do is to form the committees, the consultative councils, the standing committees, select committees, and subcommittees. One secretary will do for several committees. What shall I cry? Arthur Edward Cyril Parker is appointed telephone operator at the salary of £1.10 a week, rising by annual increments of 5 shillings to £2.10 a week, with a bonus of 30 shillings at Christmas and 1 week's leave a year. A committee has been appointed to nominate a commission of engineers to consider the water supply. A commission is appointed for public works, chiefly the question of rebuilding the fortifications. A commission is appointed to confer with the Volscian Commission about perpetual peace. The Fletchers and javelin makers and smiths have appointed a joint committee to protest against the reduction of orders. Meanwhile, the guards shake dice on the marches, and the frogs, O Mantuan, croak in the marshes. Fireflies flare against the faint sheet lightning. What shall I cry? Mother, mother. Here is a row of family portraits, dingy busts, all looking remarkably Roman, remarkably like each other, lit up successively by the flare of a sweaty torch-bearer, yawning. Oh, hidden, under the hidden, where the doveswort rested and locked for a moment, a still moment repose of noon, set under the upper branches of noon's widest tree. Under the breast feather stirred by the small wind afternoon, there the cyclamen spreads its wings, there the clematis droops over the lintel, O mother, not among these busts, all correctly inscribed. I, a tired head among these heads, necks strong to bear them, noses strong to bear to break the wind. Mother, may we not be sometime almost now together? If the mactations, immolations, oblations, impetrations are now observed, may we not be, oh, hidden, hidden in the stillness of noon, in the silent croaking night? Come with the sweep of the little bat's wing, with a small flare of the firefly or lightning bug, rising and falling, crowned with dust. The small creatures chirp thinly through the dust, through the night. Oh, Mother, what shall I cry? We demand a committee, a representative committee, a committee of investigation. Resign, resign, resign.